The massive council chamber stretched for kilometers in every direction, its crystalline walls pulsing with soft blue light that seemed to breathe with the tension filling the air. 12 different alien species sat in their designated sections, each group whispering in their own languages as they waited for the final vote that would change the galaxy forever. Ambassador Jiho Park sat perfectly still in the human delegation chair, his dark eyes scanning the faces of beings he had once called allies. Some avoided his gaze entirely. Others stared at him with what could only be described as fear mixed with disgust. Only one, Councillor Vexthari from the Zephyrian delegation, seemed to show something resembling regret in his crystalline features. The progenitor chancellor, an ancient being whose species had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years before humans ever discovered fire, raised one of his forearms. The chamber fell silent instantly. His voice, when it came, carried the weight of absolute authority. We have debated for 7 cycles. We have reviewed the evidence. We have heard testimony from every member species. His massive head turned slowly to look directly at Jiho. The time for words has ended. The vote will now be cast. Jiho had known this moment was coming for months. The signs had been impossible to ignore. Trade agreements mysteriously cancelled. Diplomatic meetings postponed indefinitely. Human colonies reporting increased surveillance from council ships. The writing had been on the wall in a dozen different alien languages, all saying the same thing: humanity was no longer welcome in civilized space. The voting display materialized in the center of the chamber, a holographic cube that would show each species' decision in real time. One by one, the votes appeared. The insectoid hive collective voted first, their response appearing as a pulsing red symbol that meant rejection. The gas-based karate followed, their decision manifesting as a swirling pattern of denial. Each vote felt like a physical blow to Jiho, but he kept his expression neutral. Decades of diplomatic training had taught him never to show weakness, especially not now when weakness might be interpreted as proof that the Council's fears were justified. The Aquatic Federation cast their vote with what sounded like a mournful song that echoed through their water-filled section of the chamber. Red again. The silicon-based collective followed with a harsh grinding sound that left no doubt about their position. More red. Even species that humans had helped in the past, worlds they had saved from natural disasters or defended from hostile forces, voted against them. The Verdani, whose homeworld humans had helped terraform after a solar flare had stripped away their atmosphere, cast their vote with what looked like genuine sorrow. But the result was the same. Red. Always red. Finally, only the Zephyrians remained. Councillor Vexthari stood slowly, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns across the walls. For a moment, hope flickered in Jiho's chest. The Zephyrians had always been humanity's closest allies, the first species to welcome them into galactic civilization. Vexthari's internal light dimmed as he spoke. The Zephyrian collective casts its vote with deep regret for what has become necessary. His voice carried harmonics of genuine sadness. We vote for immediate expulsion. The final red symbol appeared on the display, and the cube shifted to show the final tally: unanimous, motion carried. The progenitor chancellor's voice boomed across the chamber. By the unanimous decision of this council, humanity is hereby classified as a Class 5 galactic threat. All human presence must be withdrawn from council space within 30 standard cycles. Failure to comply will result in the complete eradication of your species. Jiho finally stood, his movements deliberate and calm despite the chaos erupting around him. Some delegations were cheering. Others seemed stunned by what they had just voted for. A few, like the Zephyrians, appeared genuinely upset by the decision they felt forced to make. 30 cycles, Jiho said, his voice cutting through the noise without need for amplification. Every being in the chamber turned to look at him. You want us gone in 30 cycles? That is correct, the Chancellor replied. 30 cycles to remove all human presence from council space. No exceptions. Jiho nodded slowly, as if considering the timeline. We understand. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled representatives one final time. You'll have your 30 cycles. Security drones began moving toward the human delegation, their weapons powered but not yet aimed. Jiho held up a hand to stop his own security detail from reacting. There was no point in violence now. The decision was made. As he was escorted from the chamber, Jiho caught Vexthari's eye one final time. The Zephyrian's crystalline features were cycling through patterns of deep distress, and Jiho could see a question forming in those alien eyes: what have we done? The massive doors sealed behind him with a sound like thunder, cutting off the celebration and argument still raging within. Jiho walked calmly to the transport dock, his diplomatic escort maintaining professional silence around him. Only when he was safely aboard his personal shuttle did he allow himself to activate his secure communicator. "Admiral Minho," he said quietly, "execute Protocol 7. The Council has made their choice." The voice that answered was calm and professional, but Jiho could hear the underlying tension. "Confirmed, sir. Protocol 7 is active. How long do we have?" 30 cycles, Jiho replied, settling back in his seat as the shuttle departed Council Station Prime. "More than enough." As Earth's blue and white surface grew larger in the viewport, Jiho allowed himself a small smile. The Council thought they had just solved their human problem before it could grow any larger. They had no idea that they had actually just made it infinitely worse. The real work could finally begin. Captain Sunyo Kim stood on the bridge of the massive transport vessel New Seoul, watching dozens of civilian shuttles dock with practiced efficiency. Each shuttle carried families, scientists, and engineers who had spent their entire lives building homes on worlds that no longer wanted them. The loading process had been going on for 18 hours straight, but there were no complaints, no panic, no chaos that the Council probably expected. "Sir, we're receiving priority communications from Director Yuna Lee at Research Station Omega," his communications officer announced. "She's requesting immediate military escort for extraction." Sunyo nodded but kept his eyes on the tactical display showing human ships throughout Council space. To anyone watching from the outside, it looked exactly like what the Council had demanded, a complete withdrawal of human presence. What they couldn't see were the quantum signatures each ship was leaving behind, or the fact that many of these vessels were heading to coordinates that didn't exist on any official star charts. "Set course for the Kepler Void region," Sunyo ordered. "And get me a direct line to the director." Dr. Yuna Lee's face appeared on the main screen moments later. Her usually neat laboratory coat was stained with chemical burns and her hair was pulled back hastily, but her eyes burned with an intensity that made even veteran soldiers uncomfortable. Behind her, teams of scientists were working frantically to pack equipment and data cores that glowed with strange energies. "Sunyo, thank the stars you made it here," she said without any greeting pleasantries. "Project Prometheus is finally ready for full deployment. The Council wanted us gone from their space." She smiled, and for the first time in months, it looked genuinely happy. They're about to get exactly what they wished for. "What's our destination, Doctor?" Sunyo asked, though part of him wasn't entirely sure he wanted to know the answer. "Coordinates that officially don't exist," Yuna replied, her fingers dancing over controls that seemed to respond to her thoughts as much as her touch. "We're going home, Captain. Our real home. The one we've been building while they weren't looking." As the New Seoul prepared to jump to hyperspace, Sunyo received reports from across the galaxy. Human colonies were being evacuated with clockwork precision, but not in the desperate, panicked way the Council expected. Instead, it looked more like a carefully planned military operation that had been rehearsed 1,000 times. On Kepler 442b, human families loaded their belongings onto transport ships while saying goodbye to alien neighbors who had once been friends. Many of the non-human residents seemed genuinely sad to see them go, but none dared speak against the Council's decision. Fear had a way of silencing even the most well-meaning voices. On the mining world of Ross 128b, human engineers systematically shut down the massive extraction facilities that had been supplying rare minerals to half the galaxy. They left the machinery intact and undamaged, but somehow every alien technician who tried to restart the systems after the humans left found that nothing worked quite right anymore. The strangest reports came from the Outer Rim territories, where human research stations and deep space installations were being abandoned. But instead of leaving them empty, the humans seemed to be activating some kind of automated systems before they left. Long-range sensors detected massive energy buildups in areas that were supposed to be completely evacuated. Admiral Minho's flagship appeared on Sunyo's communication screen, the older man's weathered face showing none of the stress that should come with coordinating the largest evacuation in galactic history. "How are the civilian transports holding up?" Minho asked. "Better than expected, sir. Morale is actually improving the further we get from Council space." Sunyo paused, watching another group of shuttles dock with military precision. "Sir, can I ask what we're really doing here? This doesn't feel like a retreat." Minho's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "What do you think we're doing, Captain?" "Honestly? It feels like we're shedding dead weight. Like we're finally free to do something we've been planning for a very long time." "That's because we are," Minho replied simply. "The Council spent so much time being afraid of what humans might become that they never stopped to ask what we already were. They think they're exiling us to prevent us from growing too powerful. His smile was cold and sharp. They don't realize they just removed the only thing that was holding us back. As the new soul jumped to hyperspace, Sunyo felt a strange sensation wash over him. The ship systems seemed to be operating more smoothly than they ever had before, as if some kind of limitation had been removed. The hyperspace jump itself felt different too, faster and more efficient than the standard council-approved navigation systems should have allowed. Director Lee, he called out, what exactly was Project Prometheus? Yuna's image reappeared on his screen, but now she was standing in what looked like a completely different kind of laboratory. The walls seemed to be alive, pulsing with organic patterns that somehow incorporated advanced technology. Behind her, other scientists were working with equipment that seemed to defy several laws of physics. Project Prometheus was never just about advanced technology, Captain, she explained. It was about evolution. About becoming something more than what we were when we had to play by their rules. She gestured to the strange environment around her. The council was right to fear human potential. They just made one critical mistake. What mistake was that? They assumed that potential was something we might achieve in the future. They never considered the possibility that we'd already achieved it, and were just being polite about not showing them. As the human fleet disappeared from council sensors across the galaxy, alien species began moving into abandoned human territories and facilities. They congratulated themselves on finally being free from the unpredictable human influence. None of them noticed that every piece of human technology they inherited had been subtly modified in ways they wouldn't understand for years to come. The exodus was complete, but it had never really been about leaving. It had always been about becoming something the Council could never have imagined in their worst nightmares. Councillor Vexthari floated in his private observation chamber aboard Council Station Prime, his crystalline body reflecting the light of distant stars in patterns that showed his deep unease. 6 months had passed since the human exodus, and what should have been a time of celebration had instead become something far more disturbing. The silence from human space was absolute. Report, he commanded as Intelligence Coordinator Kirith Dal flowed through the chamber's entrance, his gaseous form shifting nervously between different density states. The situation grows more concerning by the day, Counselor, Kirith Dal began, his voice carrying harmonics of worry. All former human colonies remain completely abandoned. No energy signatures, no communication signals, nothing. It's as if they simply vanished from existence the moment they left our space. Vexthari's internal light dimmed, a clear sign of distress among his people. But there have been other reports. Incidents. Yes, sir. Merchant vessels throughout the Outer Rim are reporting encounters with ships of completely unknown design. The descriptions vary wildly, but all agree on one thing: these vessels appear and disappear without using any known form of propulsion or stealth technology. The holographic display between them showed a galactic map with human territory marked in gray. But scattered throughout Council space were dozens of red dots, each representing a mysterious sighting or unexplained disappearance. 3 full collective scout fleets have failed to return from patrol missions in sectors that should be completely empty, Kirith Dal continued. The hive mind is becoming increasingly agitated about the losses. They're demanding answers we don't have. What about long-range sensor data? That's where things become truly disturbing, sir. We're detecting quantum disturbances in systems that our star charts show as empty space. Energy patterns that don't match any known technology in our databases. And yesterday, we received something that has the entire intelligence division concerned. Kirith Dal manipulated the display, showing a section of space that had once contained the human research station called Icarus. Now it showed nothing but empty void. We sent our investigation team to examine the abandoned facility. What they found was unexpected. Show me. The chamber filled with a recording from the investigation ship. The image showed a perfectly empty section of space where the massive research station should have been. No debris, no structural remains, nothing to indicate that anything had ever existed there. The station is completely gone, the investigation team leader reported. But sensors are detecting a single transmission source broadcasting on all known frequencies. Vexthari watched as his people played the message that had been waiting in that empty space. The voice that filled the chamber was calm, measured, and unmistakably human. To the Galactic Council, you wanted us gone. Congratulations. You have succeeded beyond your wildest imagination. We are no longer bound by your laws, your territories, or your understanding of what is possible. What happens next is not our choice to make. It is yours. You have been given exactly what you asked for. We hope you can live with the consequences. The message ended with a set of coordinates. When checked against every database in Council space, they led to a star system that officially did not exist. Have we attempted to make contact? Vexthari asked quietly. We've tried every communication method available to us. There's no response. It's as if humanity has moved beyond the need for traditional communication entirely. Reports from across the galaxy painted an increasingly disturbing picture. On worlds that had once traded regularly with human colonies, alien merchants found their supply chains disrupted in ways they couldn't understand. Equipment that humans had helped design or maintain began failing in subtle but critical ways. Star charts that had been accurate for centuries suddenly contained errors that led ships dangerously off course. Most troubling of all were the reports from the Outer Rim territories. Several minor species claimed that their deep space monitoring stations had detected massive energy signatures moving through regions of space that were supposed to be completely empty. When investigation teams were sent to examine these areas, they found nothing but space that seemed somehow different, as if the fundamental laws of physics had been subtly altered. There's something else, Kirith Dal said reluctantly. The Progenitor Archaeological Division has made a discovery that challenges everything we thought we knew about human history. Explain. They found human ruins on a world in the Andromeda sector. Carbon dating indicates the structures are over 50,000 years old, predating first contact by millennia. The architecture uses construction techniques that our best engineers still can't duplicate. Vexthari felt his crystalline structure vibrate with shock. That's impossible. Humans achieved spaceflight less than 2,000 years ago. That's what we believed, sir. But the evidence is undeniable. Somehow, humans have been in this galaxy far longer than any of us realized. The question is, what else don't we know about them? As if summoned by their conversation, an emergency alert began flashing throughout the chamber. Communication officers across the station were reporting the same impossible phenomenon. Every screen, every data terminal, every communication device in Council space was simultaneously displaying the same message. The face that appeared was older than Vexthari remembered, but unmistakably that of former Ambassador Jiho Park. Behind him, the background showed what appeared to be a bridge or control room built from materials that seemed to flow and shift like living tissue. Councillor Vexthari, Jiho said, his voice carrying across space without any visible transmission equipment. I believe we need to have a conversation. The transmission cut off as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving every being in Council space staring at blank screens and wondering the same thing. If humans could broadcast to every device in the galaxy simultaneously, what else could they do? In his private log that night, Vexthari recorded his growing fears. We exiled humanity to prevent them from becoming a threat. I fear we may have instead removed the only thing that was preventing them from becoming something far worse than we ever imagined. Admiral Jiho Park stood on what could barely be called a bridge in any traditional sense. The vessel around him seemed more grown than built, its walls pulsing gently with veins of light that carried information faster than any computer system the Council had ever developed. Where once there had been metal and circuits, now there was something that existed in the space between organic and technological, between possible and impossible. Open a channel to Council Station Prime, he ordered, his voice carrying through the ship without need for communication devices. All frequencies, all networks, every device they have. Captain Sunyo Kim, whose body now bore modifications that allowed him to interface directly with the ship's living systems, nodded from his position at what might once have been a control console but now resembled more of a neural interface grown from crystalline bone and flowing metal. Channel open, Admiral. They're receiving us whether they want to or not. Jiho's image appeared simultaneously on every screen throughout Council space. In government buildings, military installations, private homes, and deep space stations, every electronic device capable of displaying an image showed the same thing. A human who looked fundamentally changed in ways that were difficult to define but impossible to ignore. Councillor Vexthari materialized on Jiho's main display, his crystalline features cycling through patterns of deep distress and barely controlled fear. Around him, other Council members could be seen gathering in what appeared to be an emergency session. Admiral Park, Vexthari managed, his voice carrying harmonics of shock. Your transmission method is unprecedented. And your vessel appears to be unlike anything in our technological databases. That's because it was never in your databases to begin with, Jiho replied calmly. We've moved beyond databases, Counselor. Beyond star charts, beyond physics as you understand them. He gestured to the bridge around him, where human crew members moved with fluid grace between stations that seemed to respond to thought rather than physical input. You wanted us gone from your space. We honored that request completely. What do you want from us? Vexthari asked, though his tone suggested he already feared the answer. To fulfill our original agreement. We're leaving this galaxy entirely, just as you demanded. But before we go, we thought you should see exactly what you were so afraid of, and what you've now released by removing every restriction we placed on ourselves. The display shifted to show an external view, and what the Council saw defied every law of physics they thought they understood. Ships filled local space in numbers that should have been impossible to hide, but these weren't ships in any recognizable sense. Some appeared to exist in multiple dimensions at once, their forms shifting between states of matter that Council scientists had only theorized about. Others seemed to be constructed from folded spacetime itself, their hulls rippling with gravitational waves that bent light around them. 30 cycles, Jiho said softly, his voice carrying easily across the vast distance between them. You gave us 30 cycles to leave Council space. We used that time very efficiently. Dr. Yuna Lee appeared beside him, though her method of arrival involved what looked like stepping through a tear in reality itself. Her form was still recognizably human, but changed in ways that made the assembled Council representatives instinctively step back from their displays. When she moved, space around her seemed to bend slightly, and her eyes held depths that suggested she was seeing far more than the 3 dimensions the Council was limited to. Honored Council members, she began, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in frequencies beyond normal hearing. You expressed concern about humanity's potential for growth and change. Allow us to demonstrate what that potential looks like when freed from the constraints of coexistence. What followed was a display that redefined the watching aliens' understanding of what was possible. Human ships folded space around themselves, traveling distances that should have taken months in mere seconds. Others began converting empty vacuum into matter, creating resources from nothing but quantum fluctuations and directed will. Most disturbing of all, some vessels appeared to exist in multiple realities simultaneously, their crews working with technologies that operated according to laws of physics that simply didn't exist in the Council's universe. This is impossible, whispered the progenitor chancellor, his ancient voice carrying across the communication channel. These technologies violate fundamental laws of thermodynamics, causality, quantum mechanics. Only if you limit yourself to thinking within the boundaries of a single-dimensional framework, Yuna explained patiently. When you exiled us, you removed our obligation to limit ourselves to your understanding of reality. We've transcended those limitations entirely. The demonstration reached its peak as human ships began opening portals to what appeared to be other galaxies, other dimensions, other versions of reality where different physical laws applied. The technology was so advanced that it appeared indistinguishable from magic to the watching Council members. We're keeping our word, Jiho announced as the human fleet began to withdraw through the portals. We're leaving your galaxy completely. But we want you to remember something very important. You taught us that peaceful coexistence was impossible. That lesson works both ways. Captain Sunyo Kim's ship was among the last to depart, pausing at the edge of normal spacetime. His final transmission was brief but carried implications that would haunt the Council for generations. Thank you for setting us free. We won't forget this lesson. When we return, and we will return eventually, remember that you chose this path. All of it. The portal closed with a sound like reality healing itself, leaving behind empty space that somehow felt different, as if the fundamental structure of the universe had been permanently altered by the human presence. Vexthari floated alone in his chamber, staring at sensors that showed no trace of the massive fleet that had just departed. In his personal log, he recorded the words that would become the Council's epitaph. We feared what humanity might become. We never considered what they would become because of what we did to them. Retry SF. The demonstration took place in an empty star system at the very edge of the galaxy, where space was so dark and cold that most species avoided it entirely. But today, representatives from every Council world had gathered aboard their most advanced observation vessels to witness something that would change their understanding of reality forever. Dr. Yuna Lee materialized in the center of the Council fleet without using any visible transportation method. One moment empty space surrounded the alien ships, and the next she was simply there, standing in the vacuum as if it were solid ground. Her form had changed even more since their last meeting, becoming something that existed partially in their dimension and partially in others that the Council couldn't perceive. Honored representatives, she began, her voice reaching every ship simultaneously despite the impossibility of sound traveling through space. You wish to understand what humanity becomes when freed from the need to limit ourselves. Today, you will see the complete truth. What followed redefined every law of physics the Council thought they understood. Human ships didn't just move through space, they reshaped it. Vessels appeared that seemed to be constructed from crystallized time itself, their hulls shifting between past and future states. Others were built from compressed dimensions, somehow containing interior spaces larger than their exterior forms. Captain Sunyo Kim's ship demonstrated the ability to exist in 17 different realities simultaneously, each version exploring different possibilities of what the vessel could become. Admiral Minho's flagship converted the empty space around it into a fully functional star system, complete with planets that supported life forms that had never existed before. But the most terrifying demonstration came when Dr. Yuna began explaining what they had truly accomplished during their exile. The Council feared that humanity would grow too powerful if left unchecked, she said, her form flickering between dimensions as she spoke. But you never asked the right question. You never wondered what we already were before you forced us to reveal ourselves. She gestured, and the space around the Council fleet filled with images and data streams that bypassed their ship's computers entirely, appearing directly in the minds of every observer. Project Prometheus was never about creating new technology. It was about removing the artificial limitations we had placed on ourselves to make coexistence possible. For centuries, we held back our true capabilities because we believed peaceful cooperation was preferable to dominance. The images showed human colonies throughout the galaxy, but not as the Council remembered them. These were settlements that had been secretly operating according to technologies far beyond anything they had shared with other species. Humans had been using dimensional engineering, consciousness transfer, and reality manipulation for generations while pretending to struggle with problems that other species found difficult. Every human you ever met was essentially wearing a mask, Yuna continued. We limited our lifespans to match yours, restricted our mental capabilities to levels you could relate to, and used primitive technologies so you wouldn't feel threatened. The humans you knew were playing a character designed to make you comfortable. Councillor Vexthari's crystalline form was cycling through patterns of pure shock aboard his observation vessel. This means, every interaction we ever had was carefully managed to prevent you from realizing what we actually were, Yuna confirmed. But when you exiled us, you removed our motivation to maintain that pretense. You forced us to become ourselves without restraint. The revelation that followed was the most disturbing of all. Human ships began demonstrating technologies that suggested they had been manipulating galactic events for far longer than anyone had suspected. Star charts updated themselves to show human presence in regions of space where no human had supposedly ever traveled. Archaeological sites across the galaxy revealed evidence of human influence dating back millions of years. The ruins your people found in Andromeda weren't ancient human colonies, Admiral Jiho Park said as his impossible vessel drifted closer to the Council fleet. They were research stations we abandoned when we decided to try the experiment of pretending to be a young species discovering the galaxy for the first time. The scope of human deception became clear as data flowed directly into Council minds. Humans had been guiding galactic development for eons, carefully managing the rise and fall of civilizations, preventing wars that would have destroyed promising species, and ensuring that intelligent life could flourish. They had been the hidden shepherds of galactic civilization, working from the shadows to create the peaceful, stable society that the Council now governed. But you decided we were a threat, Yuna said, her voice carrying notes of genuine sadness. You chose fear over trust, exile over cooperation. So now you get to see what the galaxy looks like when humanity stops pretending to be harmless. The final demonstration showed human ships opening permanent gateways to other galaxies, other dimensions, other realities where countless versions of humanity had already spread across infinite universes. The revelation was clear: this galaxy's humans were just one small part of something vast beyond imagination. We're leaving as promised, Jiho announced as the human fleet began its final departure. But understand what you're losing. For millions of years, humanity has been the force preventing galactic civilization from destroying itself. We were your immune system, your guidance system, your protection against threats you never even knew existed. As the last human ships vanished through dimensional portals, they left behind a final gift that would haunt the Council forever: the knowledge that they had just exiled the only force that had been keeping the galaxy safe. Captain Sunyo Kim's final transmission echoed across every Council world. You wanted to see what humanity becomes without limits. Now you'll discover what the galaxy becomes without humanity's protection. Good luck. Councillor Vexthari sat alone in his chamber as reports began flooding in from across Council space. Without human influence, ancient conflicts were reigniting, dimensional predators were appearing in systems that had been safe for millennia, and technologies that had worked perfectly for centuries were beginning to fail in ways that suggested they had been secretly maintained by human oversight. The Council had successfully removed humanity from their galaxy. They were about to learn that humanity had never been the threat they needed to worry about. They had been the solution.